microphone and camera on mute, or just looking at saving some broadband speed. The webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be made available, and the slides will also be made available. So in these installments of our series, the support series, we're going to be looking at the who of net zero. And the who is resources, both human and financial. And for these, I'm pleased to be joined by Rachel Tulloch and Dougie Knox of Energy Skills Partnership, or ESP, who's going to support us and present to us what support is available. So ESP is a sector agency in Scotland and focusing on energy transition, zero carbon, engineering, construction, and STEM. And Rachel's area of responsibility includes hydrogen, low carbon heat, low carbon transport, and energy initiatives. And she has developed a range of curricula over the years and done so very successfully. Dougie has 14 years experience delivering also curriculum in those sectors. So I should emphasize that Dougie expertise is in manufacturing, energy, renewable sectors, and he has been collaborating with a range of stakeholders, including industry partners, including educational or skilled providers. So again, a great pleasure to have colleges on board and ESP on board and to present to us today what support is available in terms of skills for people. So Rachel, Dougie, if I could hand over to you, and if you could just take on the screen and share your screen and introduce your presentation.
Thanks, Eric. I'll just bring it up just now. So hello everybody, I'm Rachel, not Dougie, Dougie's also on the call. So Eric's given us a really good introduction there. Yeah, we are Energy Skills Partnership. We work with all the colleges in Scotland, and we work between industry and government, just really helping the colleges, making sure that they have the right capability and capacity to deliver skills to industry, and that's very much in the net zero space. So we work with a range of different organisations across the college sector itself, public sector, industry, and we're driven by quite a few policy documents, like the climate change plan. The most recent one will be the due to be published Just Transition and Energy Strategy, which is due to be published in the new year. We've been working with the Scottish Government and various departments on that to really put the colleges at the centre of the transition to net zero. So our kind of vision for the future, we've just published our annual report, which we're more than happy to share as well, Eric, with everybody on the call. We really want to lead the energy transition by the majority of the jobs required will be at SCQF level 8 and below, which is really the college sector. Is those kind of technician skills, it's those hand skills, it's those really the hands-on, the doing that will lead the energy transition. So we want to be there to help support the colleges make that journey. We need to develop the future workforce. We need to ensure that we need to make sure that the courses that colleges are delivering have elements of all these future skills within them. As part of that, and Dougie will go on to tell you a little bit more about the work that he's been doing, we absolutely recognise that there's a place for traditional skills in this landscape. All the kind of activity that we do around transitioning to net zero, it's all complementary to what's already there. So we don't see there being masses and masses of new qualifications. It will be top-up training, additionality, upskilling and reskilling, So a lot of our activity is around building the capability and capacity for low carbon technologies within the colleges. What we mean by that is we'll do various activities. We will put on staff CPD, continuing professional development, where we will either do, it'll be a formalised recognised qualification, but some of it might involve things like learning journeys where we'll take college staff out to industry and show them what's happening. That's really important to bring that learning back into the classroom. Other things that we'll do is we'll have people come into from industry into the colleges, and we'll get the colleges together and we'll kind of discuss what's happening. We also will look for funding to buy things like what we call shared resources, and that's like expensive bits of training equipment where the colleges themselves might not be able to, you know, if it's just needed for one part of the course, they potentially might find it a bit difficult to put the business case forward. What we do is, because it's new and emerging, we will go and seek funding, we'll purchase this bit of training equipment, and then it gets shared around the colleges, and that helps them build the business case for their own curriculum as well. We're also keeping a kind of an eye on the different innovations in education, where we're looking at things like virtual reality or alternative methods of teaching and learning. We can't do this alone. There's only, within ESP itself, there's only 6 of us at the moment, where we're just kind of recruiting for an additional programme manager to help support some of the activity that Dougie and I are doing. But we work with the colleges as a kind of wider organisation, but we also work with industry and government, and just to make sure that any activity that we do is it's focused and purposeful. I mentioned that we kind of been leading into the Just Transition Energy Strategy plan that's new to be published. These are really important because we hear from industry about the amount of skills that are needed at different levels, and we need to pass that on so that the people that are writing the policy know that the resources are going into the right places. So a bit about our structure. We've just actually restructured slightly. We have a management board that's made up of senior staff from colleges. And below that, we have a strategy group. We've had one meeting of that so far. That's made up of directors and vice principals of colleges, and we really felt like we needed a bit of direction from themselves. Like, what do you need? I'm sure everybody has heard about the kind of the tight funding landscape we're in at the moment, and how colleges have been getting real cuts year upon year. This is to really, again, make sure that the impact that we have is worthwhile and purposeful. Below that, we have the heads of engineering and heads of construction departments across Scotland. And then we have more specific training networks, and they're really focused on the individual curriculum areas. We're having a bit of a review of that at the moment, because pretty much like industry is changing and things are kind of merging together, we feel that the training networks are maybe doing that as well, and they don't maybe neatly fit into the curriculum areas like they once did. So we're very kind of agile in how we take our activity forward. We have got quite a number of different training networks, and as you can see there, that's all the colleges across Scotland and which networks they're part of. What I will say is that these titles here for these training networks, they are very kind of loose. So we've got, for instance, advanced manufacture. That also takes in some fabrication and welding. Dougie will talk to that a wee bit later. The automotive training network, that started off as auto mechanics. However, that's kind of transitioning into full low carbon transport. It has a lot of synergies with the hydrogen training network at the moment, and maybe the marine and maritime training network. So we are aware that there's some quite areas of similarity and crossovers. So one of the things we're doing is looking at that and constantly revising and making sure that what we're doing is fit for the colleges. So some of the current activity that we've done, we started in about 2018, and at that point there was EV repair and maintenance for electric vehicles was quite a specialist niche skill. We actually scaled that up across Scotland over a number of years, so that we've had over 100 staff trained mostly to IMI level 3 in electric vehicle repair and maintenance, but all of them to level 2. We're actually embarking on a programme now of level 4, which goes into the battery technologies and diagnostics. Through our zero carbon transport project with Transport Scotland, we've managed to obtain quite a lot of different resources to put within the college sector. That includes electric vehicles that the college staff can use with their students to work on. Quite a lot of colleges had electric vehicles, but they were in the fleet, so they weren't, the students couldn't work on them. We've also got a number of different training rigs that allow the students to kind of practice first before they touch a vehicle. A lot of the other activity that we've had has been within hydrogen, and that's some of the curriculum development that Eric was alluding to earlier. We've done some very general awareness courses. We've done some transport courses. They're free to access and online. We're currently piloting for the Institute of Remote Industry, their level 3 repair and maintenance for hydrogen vehicles. We've developed a SQA Professional Development Award for technicians, and that's really aimed at people who are in existing industry and they need this kind of hydrogen element to it. We've had 3 full cohorts go through that, mostly at the moment of college staff, because one of the things that we do is to increase the capacity across Scotland, and we're hoping to get a centre. At the moment, there's one centre that can deliver that in Scotland that's got accreditation. That's up in Stornoway, so we're hoping to spread that across Scotland as well, where there's industry demand, I might add. We've done a VR programme around hydrogen refuelling, and all this is just about kind of educating learners and just exposing them to what's happening in the wider energy transition. We've also been really lucky. We've got our hands on a hydrogen car. That was quite a challenge for myself because they're not easy to come by, but we now have one of those, a bit like the EV cars that I mentioned in the last slide. It allows us to, it allows students to work on it, or it will allow students to work on it. So in 24-25, for some of the projects we're working on, as Eric said, I've kind of taken over low carbon heat under my remit. So for the past 4 years, we've had a programme where 3rd and 4th year plumbing and heating apprentices can get a top up of heat pump training. That allows them to go into the workforce fully qualified in new technologies. We are doing a bit of work for Scottish Enterprise, and this might be quite interesting for people on the call. It's really for the hydrogen supply chain. They've done similar for offshore wind, and what they're looking to do is a number of fact sheets where suppliers and manufacturers can see where they might fit into the hydrogen supply chain. So we know that we've got some of the skills out there, and this is really about identifying where a business could potentially, they could add hydrogen to their repertoire. We're also doing a further VR development, virtual reality development. Heavy duty vehicles are a main priority for Transport Scotland in the decarbonisation journey. They're obviously, as you can understand, they're quite big and quite difficult, and so by developing a VR programme, this again will allow more students access prior to them working on the actual vehicles themselves. We're also doing a bit around charge points. So similarly to when we start with the EV journey, we started that because we knew that there would be a number of cars coming out of maintenance and warranty agreements. The EV charge point infrastructure is similar. It's actually the same course for installing or maintaining, but there's a recognition from Transport Scotland that we need to do something around the charging Scotland, the charging infrastructure in Scotland. So we are making sure that the colleges have those skills in-house. Part of the project is upskilling for qualified electricians to enable them to work on these charge points, and part of it is the CPD programme I mentioned for our college staff so that they are trained in it, so that it's basically a train the trainer programme, and we've got some resources going into colleges so that they are able to deliver. I'm going to pass you on now to Dougie, and Dougie, if you just want to tell me when to navigate forward with your slides.
Yep, certainly I can do that. Thanks so much, everybody. Great to be here this morning. I do recognise a couple of names on the call, so if you have heard this before from me, please, I do apologise, but certainly ask questions at the end. One of the areas that I've kind of targeted here is SOEC, so it's offshore wind sector, and it's just a kind of really good example of the way that we work with the different departments in government. It's kind of the largest scale green energy supply chain that's going to be established over the next decade or so, and it's going to run for, we hope, a long time, certainly the lifespan of many new workers that are coming into the sector. It was set up. It's co-chaired by Alistair Allen, who's acting Minister for Climate Action, and Brian McFarlane from Industry. So it's very much a government and industry working together in synergy, and it's to underpin the transition to net zero and meet all these targets that we have in Scotland. And the mission is to grow the sector, and it's to be more sustainable, competitive, and commercially attractive. And that's internally and externally. So we're hoping for internal investment as well to come from outside the UK that bolsters that. Next slide, please. And this is just a bit of a graphical representation of what ScotWind was. So SWIC was set up to support ScotWind. This map shows the ScotWind lease beds. We've got the designation there of the fixed bottom in the blue and the floating in the green. As you would imagine, the fixed bottom is close to shore, and as the basin deepens from the shelf, we had to go to floating technology. There is almost no floating in Scotland yet, so this is the future, and that's the aspiration there. It says a total of 27.6 megawatts there, 27.6 gigawatts. That is increasing, and that's because technology is increasing as well. Interestingly, the other colours that are in there are ones that are already either operational or in the stages of construction or consent. So some fairly sizable ones there. Probably the most notable one is Berwick Bank, which is off the coast of the Firth of Forth there. When that becomes operational, 4.1 gigawatts, that will be, unless somebody overtakes us, the largest in the world for one wind farm. So quite a lot of exciting things going on there. Next slide, please, Rachel. And this is the timeline that goes along with that. So you can see from that where we are just now. We had fields like Moray East in 2022, Moray West is 2024. That has just started energy production just now. Another one that's in the very near future is Inchcape in 2025. And again, that's off the coast of the Forth. Some interesting points with that, with the inward investment as well. There is going to be growth within the area, within manufacturing, and there will be employment opportunities with that. I'll speak about that slightly later. But a lot of these are in the future. Above the line there, we have fixed bottom. As you can see, there is a lot of fixed bottom activity, but below the line is the floating offshore wind, and that is the one that is emerging. That's going to be absolutely huge in the future. There's the energy production is one part of it, but there's also the infrastructure that's required for that, the supply chain, the tier 1, 2s, and 3s that are involved within the supply chain. And although the activity is near the coast with offshore wind, a lot of the supply chain will be within central belt regions and all throughout Scotland, the UK, and Europe as well. So we would like to maintain as much of that manufacturing within the UK, within Scotland as possible. Next slide, please, Rachel. And this gives a little bit of an idea of the jobs that may increase for that. And this is offshore. This is direct and indirect jobs. So some people will be working offshore with this, but an awful lot will be working within the supply chain. There's a decline in oil and gas. That's expected. A lot of policy drives that, and the government that's in place. There will be some people transitioning, but not in the volumes that we would expect. It's not going to be like 50% of oil and gas workers will come across. It'll be a much smaller number than that because of age demographics and just the longevity of oil and gas. So then a lot of new people will need to come into the sector, maybe transitioning from other sectors, and that's where colleges can play a part in that with the upskilling and reskilling, short courses, micro credentials, and we can work quite agilely with industry to bring in short courses to allow for that. The colleges are delighted to work with any industry members who have a need or specific need for skills training. And we have other things like hydrogen starts to emerge there, carbon capture, use and storage starts to emerge, but offshore floating wind appears to be the largest at this stage. So 21,000 people required in Scotland for that. And the next slide, Rachel. Where did we get that data from? A lot of that was from OIC, that's the Offshore Wind Industry Council, and it's a skills intelligence model. The one that we have now is about just over a year old, the data. That is a survey going out towards the end of this year, and that will be republished again early next year, and it'll be far more granular in the detail that's within that, which will show more of the job roles, the specifications and the requirements by industry for that. Next slide, please, Rachel. Quite a lot of data on this sheet that you maybe can't read particularly well. It does split into the two sides. You have the fixed bottom and the floating side of things. Fixed bottom already exists. It needs to grow by 2030, and that is a difference about 7,500 workforce required for that. And floating kind of embryonic stages just now, and up to 37,000 people required for that within supply chain. And if we go back to a comment that Rachel made earlier on the SCQF levels, SCQF level 8 and below is where the bulk of the jobs will exist within that. Level 8 is HND, so it's below HND. A lot of these jobs you'll see are, in fact, semi-skilled mechanical, manual mechanical, skilled construction engineers. So a lot within the engineering sector, a lot within the construction sector, but the bulk of the employees will be semi-skilled, skilled and technician level. So that's where the big numbers are. So we need to start producing that workforce now through modern apprenticeships and through schemes to upskill existing staff to enable them to do that. And the next slide, Rachel. I left this one in, and it's a lot of these timelines are dependent upon national grid connection points and consenting as well. But the national grid requires an upgrade as well. And really just the headline figure there is right at the top. It's £700 billion investment by 2037 to meet the needs of that. And with the upgrading of the grid as well, is manufacturing is required for that, for pylons, for cabling, for components, and then for construction and groundworks. So again, a huge investment on a national level to upgrade the grid to allow for this energy transition to take place. And the next slide, Rachel. So this is just a little bit of activity that we're doing as ESP to try and make a difference, make some impact on this. So there's a focus on increasing fabrication and welding capability and capacity. We've heard that quite strongly from industry. We've already got existing industry within Scotland along the Central Belt with large-scale shipbuilding that takes place, which requires fabrication and welding. Some very interesting initiatives working with colleges there to fast-track people into work and to get them qualified within fabrication and welding. Some of the hard-to-reach long-term unemployed have been targeted in that to bring them into work, upskilling to semi-skilled level to allow people to join the workforce and be productive in a very short period of time, and as well as the large-scale apprenticeships that take place throughout the whole of Scotland. We really are at full capacity with apprenticeships just now, but we'd like to grow that further, which sometimes requires additional funding. One of the things that we've brought in is the AR welding, which is a very low carbon way of delivering and fast tracking people to the skills required for that. The reason for that was that materials are very expensive within the workplace. The AR welding is its augmented reality. It gives instant feedback and scores the candidates where they use the equipment. And there's also the safety implications. There's no extraction required, no hot work required. Excellent for bringing young people into an environment where they can try out a skill that they may be interested in as a career in the future. So that AR equipment was sourced through Ocean Winds, one of the offshore wind developers, and we've got a mobile unit that can go throughout Scotland, so we can reach outlying areas and rural areas of Scotland for that. VR headsets, another one that Rachel spoke about earlier, using VR technology. And again, there's working at height involved in that. We can replicate that through VR headsets and have some scenarios for technical training. We have CPD for Advanced Manufacture, working closely with NMIS, National Manufacturing Institute Scotland. They also have CPD opportunities that the college can tap into. So we're trying to bring up the workforce to the highest level we possibly can, so we can put on short courses and training courses for industry and student requirements. Working heavily with SWIC on sector attractiveness, and that's to bring people into the industry. It is aimed at offshore wind, but we've got a huge onshore wind sector. We've also got large-scale structural solar. We've got hydrogen coming in that. So we really need to bring people into all these sectors for the energy transition. And then there's inward investment opportunities, which again could bring work. And the one that I maybe touched on earlier was Inchcape. There was a recent announcement in the last month or so with a large blade manufacturer, Vestas, in Edinburgh. So we've actually been having conversations for the last year or two around that because we think it may happen. It's not absolutely signed off yet, but there is an agreement in place that they could be the blade manufacturers for new 15 megawatt turbines offshore. So to preempt that, we've been working with one of the local colleges, and we have got training programs that are penciled in place to allow for that. So a lot of forward thinking taking place to be quite agile and get the right people in the right place at the right time to aid the manufacturer, which leads to economic growth. So that's part of the big plan. And I think that's the last slide, Rachel.
Yeah, it is. Thanks very much, everybody. I think, Dougie, you ended on a really good point there, is that we're seeing similar skills across all the sectors that I work in, that you work in, and that actually we need that forward planning. And that's part of the reason we're delighted when Eric asked us if we wanted to do this morning, because we're really open to having those conversations with people.
Well, thank you very much, both. It was really interesting and a lot of activities indeed, and a lot of good things. So I think it would be time now to open the floor to people for any question for Rachel or Dougie. Please either put them into the chat or come off mute and put your question to the team. Any questions from anybody on the call today?
Our contact details will be shared, Eric, anyway. So if anybody wants to come back to us at a later point, what I would say is that with us working with all the colleges within Scotland, we can, if there's a particular requirement for any training needs or anything that industry may require, they can either reach out to their local colleges or they can reach out to us. We can find out the most appropriate college within their area with the skill sets required, or speak to several colleges to see who has the capability and capacity. Bespoke training courses can be put together for that. It's something all the colleges have done in the past, and that could be things like transition training, where you're trying to give some mechanical engineers some electrical knowledge, basic electrical knowledge to isolate equipment before working on it, things like that. Or indeed anything to do with net zero or sustainability. Yeah,
I think it is key. Skills, and we're going to look into that, but skills is definitely a gap both in terms of the type of skills as well as the number of people to deliver those skills. Mike, you want to come?
Yeah, hi there. Do you just a quick question about the training side of things? We supply specific training on CAD in Scotland, and obviously we work with some of the educational or academic establishments there. But I think we're very open to providing some training with these establishments, but it's usually as part of a broader training session. So I'd be interested to find out what type of training is coming through from the colleges and how we can potentially help with the resources and offer training courses that augment what they're actually trying to achieve there.
Yep, absolutely, Mike. That'd be a conversation we could certainly have with the colleagues. I'm not sure exactly what software they would use, but you're probably more in touch with industry requirements and could guide and help and steer the colleges, or it could be CPD for staff as well, to upskill the staff within the colleges to show them the latest technologies. So yeah,
Sure.
absolutely reach out to me and we can have a conversation.
Okay. Yep.
I think that's it. Like very much, we want to have conversations. We want to hear, what your requirements are.
Athena, you want to?
Hi, I just want to say thanks. That was really interesting. I was wondering if there's any offerings at all for like the kind of more experienced staff in the workforce as well. So things like strategy and systems thinking that might accelerate, like, getting more of the kind of novice levels more strategically so that all the businesses can transition quicker as well.
Just so understanding, like leadership training and things like that.
Yeah, or I think because traditionally we have quite a lot of siloed approaches in certain departments that don't talk to other departments. So some of it is possibly data awareness and diligence or interpretation cross functions, which allows, kind of collaborative strategic plan making that makes businesses more green, faster in their transitions and stuff like that. So is there anything planned or discussed or in the offering? Because I think that might steer the pace as well as the compass direction.
Yeah, there's maybe more happening in the offshore wind, Dougie, more conversations around it. Certainly the colleges offer that as part of their kind of offering anyway, but maybe not the across departments. It is around the kind of leadership management, the data analysis, rather than specific sectors. But there's maybe there maybe is absolutely something there, where in order to accelerate the transition, it does need to be across some of the technical disciplines, or at least contextualized across some of the technical disciplines. There has been some conversations with offshore wind, hasn't there, Dougie?
What I was going to say was that we do also work quite closely with some of the universities, and some of the universities might offer micro credentials and credits on that as well. I'm trying to think of a couple. We had data science maybe a couple of years ago, where there's about 10 master's credits were available, and the training was actually free for that. So a lot of employees from Babcock International at the time took that up. It was mostly recent graduates who had joined the company, who are wanting to, continue their studies, and they worked with, I think it was Edinburgh University and Strathclyde, to do these micro credentials. So there is stuff that if it's something that the colleges didn't have the capacity for, it'd be worth a conversation, and we can work with university partners to see if there was something, and potentially there could be bespoke programs put together. I think Rachel said most of the colleges do kind of leadership programs and project management programs and types like that, but it'll just be a kind of a generic qualification. There may be a case where they could put together a specific package to meet the needs of a certain industry partner.
And I suppose that's where our online courses that are free to access come on board as well. They're very much aimed at anybody who wants to know a little bit more about the energy transition. So we've got one there on hydrogen, we've got one there on hydrogen for transport, we've got one there on offshore wind, and we're looking at doing one on the kind of energy efficiency side. And they are really aimed at anybody who wants to know a little bit more about these industries. So colleges have used them as an induction tool for their students. The Scottish Government hydrogen team used it as an induction tool for the policy team for their staff coming on board. But we also, it can be used for school students. It could be used for what the original hydrogen was developed with SGN as a way of really communicating to their general staff what was happening with the H100 project. So there are little bits like that are available, that you don't have to have masses of technical knowledge in a specific area to kind of access the information. And we're more than happy to share the links to those. Those are free to access for anybody, and it's kind of with that purpose of educating within rather than specific training in an area.
Yeah, Duncan.
Hi, good morning. If you had an ask of manufacturing and industry in general, what would it be? If you were to ask for something from our side, what would it be?
I think just talk to us, tell us what you need. Absolutely, the more that we understand what your needs and future needs will be, the better we can plan, and we can be a bit more proactive rather than reactive. It takes a while to well, we can depending on what it is, we can work quite quickly, but in some instances it might take a while and a bit of planning. And the earlier we have these conversations with you, the better the better we'll be able to serve you, I suppose.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yeah, and just to add, the collaboration with industry and FE is really, really important. So the more intelligence the colleges have, the more they can cater for your needs. There may be something within your workforce planning that you've done for the future that could be preempted. There may be candidates within colleges that are already studying courses that could lead into employment within the company. There's partnerships with some industries where they sponsor a course, and it could be called the ABC Engineering NC Level 5 course. And at the end of that course, perhaps 3 or 4 people are given some work experience from that, or it's a guaranteed interview on successful completion. So it can be something like just dipping into the talent pool that's already within the colleges, and it may help on recruitment costs.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I think as well it takes time, obviously, to train the workforce. So again, the earlier we get the signals about what that workforce may be and when it's needed, we allow the time for the actual candidates to go through the training.
Good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you to both of you. Thanks for people to come in and ask questions. And as Dougie said, you know, the details to Dougie and Rachel will be provided, and then feel is free to connect with them and understand better what's on offer, what can be delivered, you know, what can be developed, as well as what is existing. So
just to add to that, Eric, sorry, just
yeah.
it doesn't actually matter whether it's myself or Dougie you reach out to, because we work very closely with each other, and so yeah, we'll point you in the right direction. If you're unsure about which one of us you need to approach, we work very closely.
Thank you both. So I'm gonna share my screen. So you should be able to see my screen now. And again, thanks a lot to Dougie and Rachel for their presentation and sharing all that information of what ESP can do. Today, we're looking at the who, and you've heard a lot about the skills. We've delivered webinars previously. We've covered the first 4 steps, you know, that covered the why, the what, the when, the where, and the how. And today, as I said, we're looking at the who. And the who, in the large sense of the term, meaning financial and human resources. It's about resources. We're looking at step number 5 in that 7-step process we've developed. So, green transition, what are green skills? Well, green skills are what you need to develop and behave and deliver a sustainable and resource efficient society. That's what green skills are about. And when we talk about green skills and employability, and you've heard it already, it's about greening of traditional skills. So if I carry on the theme of the welder, it's not green because he's welding a wind turbine or he's welding an offshore platform. What makes it green is when he starts asking about, you know, where the fume go, where did the steel come from, you know, how much emission in my consumables. That's what it's about. It's about greening traditional skills. So, and not all of them have to be technical. And what you're looking at is roles where today you expect people to be computer literate. You expect people to work safely and not harm themselves. And in the same way, what the next step is people behaving and having an attitude towards sustainability that makes it a more sustainable way of working. So that's what you're looking at from green skills. And to get a green transitions, then you're going to have innovation, because what you want to do is you want to be net zero by 2050. That's a Paris Agreement. And to be net zero, you will require innovation. But to get innovation, you require technology. And technology will require people, and people will require skills. That's what we've just looked into. And that may be reskilling or upskilling or skilling. So we say net zero will require innovation. So how do you drive innovation? How do you deliver innovation? So if you look at two key sectors, the consumer goods and the manufacturing sectors, what are the drivers to start innovations? Well, it's availability of talent inside the organization, and that's the biggest driver, 29%. And that is key. That's the skills you have in your organization. Then there is a financial side to it, which is the incentive you'd get from the government, like tax credit, or the availability of grant. And really, that's what drives the innovation in organizations. In terms of resources, how do you resource that innovations once you've decided it's time to do some innovations? Then the bulk of it is simply internal. Just organization, just cover the cost and organize themselves so they deliver R&D internally, and R&D in a wide sense of the term. And then you also get private resources. It could be, ventures, capital, other areas. And the big one also is collaboration with other organizations. That's your community. That's what your peers, people that maybe would do the same thing as you, or people that would supply you. That's where you find a lot of the innovations. And that's your resources, but you still need to finance it. And the bulk of the financing is self-financing. That's not unusual. But another big one is the R&D tax relief, and I'll come back to that. And you've also got access to grant. The challenge with grants is usually the applications and the managing of A, the application, and B, the claiming. And they tend to be retroactive, so you need to put the money in first before you get the money back. But it is available, and there are some of it is available. So if I take the example of the R&D tax credit, which is a big one in the way it's used, the key thing to understand, I think, is R&D is not blue sky university research. It could be simply an improvement of a product or a process. It has to have a technical side to it, so it can't be an improvement of your procurement process, for example. And you need to address some unknown uncertainties. So what is it you're trying to do, and why do you not have the answer today? And it needs a level of trial and error experimentations. But as long as you've got these four, it's likely you'd be able to access R&D tax credit. Now, the eligible costs are quite key because they are your contribution in kind, and you can see how you can add quite a lot to it, from the staff, which is the obvious one, but also maybe software you're going to need to do that experimentations, and then the facilities you need, so lights and powers and space and potentially consultants, etc. So a lot of the costs are eligible. And what's the outcome of these? So if you think like you were having an R&D spend by the time you've put all those eligible costs together of 250K, then you would get a tax refund of about 26K at the time. And the key thing here would be to ring fence those 26K and put them back into R&D. That's the way it works. That's how you do R&D. Really, because if you use it just straightforward savings, then you're going to be struggling to keep your R&D innovation going. So that's one way to finance it. But the other way, being the grant, is the funding opportunities. And in terms of SMEs, we know that SMEs are struggling to understand what is available, and when they understand what is available, struggling to understand how you apply for it. So to help with this, we've developed a newsletter, and our newsletter cover a range of topics, and looking at the news, obviously, looking at standards and legislation and regulations, looking at innovation, but also, and that's more important here, looking at funding opportunities and where to find them, where they come. So every time we become aware of one of those funding opportunities, we'll be adding it to our newsletter. So Find Business Support is a key website at the moment you can look into. And innovation will require technology. So if you look at the Scottish Government Climate Change Plan, they've got a roadmap they've designed, and it's across 8 chapters, they call it, which you can see as, sectors, being electricity, being transport, in the industry, being agriculture. And what you have here is their ambition, their plan. And what's important is the range of opportunities you have. It goes from hydrogen, as we talked about, and energy transition. It goes through recycling and net zero transport, the heating, the negative emission technology, carbon capture. So there is a lot of opportunities that you can go after from a technology point of view, innovations, doing something different, differentiation. But the question is, do you have the innovation skills, or do you have access to those innovation skills? And what are those innovation skills? Then one way to look at innovation is you need to prepare for a brainstorming session, for example, to generate ideas. But to do that, you need to understand the user. You need to understand their needs. And for that, you can use your insights. But once you've gathered all that, you have desirability, and desirability gives you a point of view. And it is this point of view you're going to brainstorm. And the way you're going to brainstorm it is with the how may we questions. And that's going to generate ideas about the feasibility to address that desire, to address that needs. And then those ideas can then be clustered. And then when I say clustered, they can be prioritized. So that's your brainstorming session. And then you want viability. And what is about viability is about setting up a plan, how you're going to get there, your targets, and more importantly, the owners of those targets. And from that, you're going to get your opportunity, which you can track. And for this tracking process, we've been suggesting using an ocean matrix, but there are other ways to track your progress. But that's key: desirability, feasibility, viability. And do you have those skills to deliver that, or do you have access to those skills to deliver that? So technology, we've seen that all those technology we consider will always require people. So what are the situation with green job market trends? And then the key thing, I think, is the demand versus the supply. And the demand growth outpaces the supply growth. So there is more demand than there is supply. So the results of that is, in terms of worker transition, the one that will transit from organization to organizations have a level of green skills. So any worker with green skills is likely to be in high demand. And green job posting, the consequences of this is green job posting has increased, not only in terms of growth by 15%, but also in terms of hiring rates. So people are hiring more and more. And what's driving these is obviously the market of demand and supply. And for the employee, it's an opportunity for earning potentials, higher earning potentials, 18% of that higher earning. And when they earn more, it could be as much as, on average, it is 23% more. So green skills matters. It matters to the employers and it matters to the employee. And if I look at the Scottish ecosystem specifically, and if I compare 2023 last year versus 2022, then the increase in Scotland has been 7.6%, so still quite substantial. And if you look at professional roles, which are more likely to be in Scottish engineering portfolio, you're looking at 32% increase. And the green job proportion has been, in terms of proportion of all jobs, is now up to 74%. So you can see how there is a big increase and a big demand for skills in Scotland. And that is playing in the hands of employees today because of the shortage. Now, if I look at the sectors, really, we were looking at 18 sectors in 2023. There's three big drivers. One is not surprising, is electricity, gas, air conditioning, heat pumps, or everything related to that. And that's 28%. That's one of the sectors. A second sector is anything related to water and waste, and water supply, water treatment, and waste management, and any remediation on waste. And the more interesting one, I think, is 16% and of professional and scientific and technical services. And the reason is more interesting is whereas 24% of the water supply was actually only 37 job posting, but the 16% of jobs is 16% of over 11,000 job posting. So it's quite substantial in the field of professional and technical activities. And those three sectors cover 2/3 of the job posting. The other 15 sectors cover the last third. So you can see how those three are quite key to the process. And people will require skills. So what are the purpose of green skill? Well, it's about the most obvious one is producing environmentally friendly products. And that's the one where you create either a product or a service, a good or a service that will be sustainable, that will be environmentally friendly. But also the green skill is about modifying the process to reduce your resource, because if you reduce the resource you use, you do two things. You reduce cost, which is of interest, but you also reduce your emissions. So it's adapting your work processes. And it's also about supporting the green economy. So if I take the example again of the welder, a welder that would just weld a wind turbine will be indirectly supporting the green economy. So those are the purposes of green skills. And then when I looked at what are the fastest growing skills in the US and the UK, climate change mitigation is over 6 times growth in terms of increase. So that's a big one. How do you address that? And then you've got emission reduction projects we've heard a lot about, and that's what we are supporting a lot of businesses through a one-to-one. Regenerative design, which is a newer concept. Net zero, of course, which is more about how you assess your footprint. And climate resilience, because the IPCC has come out and say it's coming, it's going to arrive. So how do you become resilient? So those are the key green skills, the most popular skill. And you can see it goes from double in terms of climate resilience to over 6 times in terms of climate change mitigations. And if I take a sector which is obvious and demonstrate the idea of greening skill, the finance sectors, which is again a critical enabler, but you can see here it's about greening traditional skills. And then the demand in this area has been significant. So in terms of climate action planning, it's increased by 153%. So there's a big demand. Emission trading, which could be related to offsetting, carbon accounting, which would be related to your standards and your scopes and how you account for carbon emissions. And then the reporting, for example, your ISOs or any reporting you need to provide, that would end up with the same concept than the financial reporting. And finally, impact assessment. So you can see that in here you've got a graining of scales, a graining of threshold scale, which are the finance scales, and as well as doing pound P&L, you want to do a carbon P&L. So what are the takeaway from today? And if I look at it from financial resources and human resources, so as I said, there is no planet B. We need to be net zero by 2050 if we want to minimize the increase in temperature to 1.5 degrees. And to do that, we need net zero, and net zero will require innovations. And financial resources is what you're going to need to deliver innovations. So before you put them in, and that could be human and financial, because human resources would have a cost, is the project real? Is that going to happen? Is the project a winner? And is the project worth doing? So that's where you're looking at putting your financial resources. But once you've decided to put them in, you need to make sure you've got your human resources. So you will require innovation, and innovation will require technology. And the question is, do the stakeholders, both internal and external, have those innovation skills to support you in that ambition you have when you've defined a project that's a winner and is worth doing? And then technology will require people. And again, in terms of green technology, do the stakeholders have the green technology? So that's what you need to look at. And again, stakeholder in a wide sense of the word, internal and external tech stakeholders. So you need skills in innovation, you need skills in green technology, and that's what we heard about this morning, how you can get them and the process and how they've been developed. And those skills, the people, they will require those skills. But once you've looked at the skills, are the stakeholder interested in using those skills? People are always interested in gaining skills, for especially green skills, for what I've just showed you earlier on, because it's got a valuable in terms of earning. But you want people also to be interested in using them when they've gained them. So that's the key area. Are they also interested in using those skills? So if I look at our support program and what we can do to help in this is, so first of all, we are a community. So you've got net zero, obviously, but we've got other clusters like the Fortente offshore, the rail cluster, so you've got green, you've got hydrogen, you've got transportations, and you've got smart manufacturing. So we are a community and we're happy to help. But when I look at the support that net zero can provide, the barriers that are faced by SMEs, then the first one is a lack of tools. So we've developed a roadmap, we've developed innovation, I've showed you lean tools, and we're supporting in that sense. There's a lack of data, so we've developed and delivered webinars like today. And again, I would like to thank Rachel and Dougie for joining us today. A lack of time, so we've got a one-to-one program because those webinars are specific, like the WHO, but they still generic because we are addressing a range of people. So we, in a one-to-one, it provides time and specific time and focus on where the organization itself is on their journey. And then a lack of policy and funding, so that's a newsletter I mentioned earlier on. A lack of skills, so we've developed a training course, which you are welcome to join and do in your own time. And we've got two of those, a shorter one and a longer one, mainly centered around that 7-step process, that roadmap, that tools I mentioned earlier on. And then there's a lack of knowledge, so we've developed a library, we're sharing a library that's almost got 500 reports now. So you've got support available across the board. And then if we are missing something, just please let me know. And here you can make a note of interest or contact me. You've got my details. So I would like to thank you for taking the time this morning to join us. And I would like also to thank Dougie and Rachel from ESP for joining us today and sharing all that information. And I'm going to open the floor now to any question you may have on the issue of net zero. No questions? Information overload?
Hi, Eric. I've got a question. I'm just looking at your brilliant slide about what someone might lack and how that could be supported, right? So I think one of the things that I really try to find out, and sometimes it's not that easy, and I wonder if Scottish Engineering might be in a good place to help us, is that it's almost like a time sensitive awareness of urgency. So I get asked a lot, what if we didn't do it? So this kind of like understanding of consequences or kind of sensitive to current day deadlines or sunset dates for things and progress of other members inside the industry. Is there any good, this is like asking for a moon on a stick, is there any good resource out there that gives a good kind of landscape of progress and urgency against like real deadlines?
So yes, there is. So the first question is yes, we can help. And the second question is resources. Yes. So probably the best, and especially for members, would be to get access to our library, which is free to our members. And as long as you request a coupon. And in there is a range of folders. And one of those folders is progress, which is exactly what you described. It is like, where are we? And where do we want to be? Where do we want to go? And where are we in relation to that? And at the moment, it's not great. And therefore, that's what we've been telling our members is that be ready before it hurts, because it's going to hurt. At the moment, it's been the carrot of finance, but it won't be being grants or otherwise. But it won't be long before, if they don't get what they are looking for, they're looking at, if you're on the stick of taxonomy and reporting. So that would be one place to start. But if you have a more specific query, again, that goes back to that one-to-one program. We can have a conversation. I can point you to the key report.
Thanks, that's helpful. Thanks.
Any other questions here? No question. We will have a final webinar this year, later on next month, for looking at the last steps of that 7-step process, looking at how much specifically and the share, which you are obviously welcome to join us. So if there's no more question, I'm going to conclude this webinar. Again, thank you very much for everybody for joining us and taking the time to join us today. And a special thank to Rachel and Dougie for sharing all those informations and telling you or offering you a signposting of where you can get access to skills, which is key for net zero. It's key for people, for your people, and for net zero. Thank you very much. And I think we can close the meeting here. Thank you.